Okay,
to
so
get into the mindset of being short.
yeah. So we start with I'll say when while you're wandering down the halls, coming to visit Victor, you probably down the hall start hearing a very odd sound. Does Tick know Gnomish as a language?
Mm, that's a good question. Um, in fact,
You do?
yeah,
Then
actually.
you will understand the words about to what he's doing because you very much clearly hear Victor singing loud in Gnomish with a bit of a drunken like, yeah, yeah, the beer is here. Drink it all down and spill it on here. We clink
Tick,
on our glasses and have a good time. Drink up, your friend, the beer is mine.
Tick goes ahead and takes the notepad that he had inside of his arm and just takes it on the other side and goes ahead and raps on the door. Except he's small and has hollow bones, so if anything, it's more like a tick tick tick.
Yeah, you hear the door open as Victor goes, yeah, one moment, yeah, 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 yeah. Ha, ha. And you hear this kind of slight stumble as he walks up and he opens up his door. And as he opens up the door, you see Victor, who's got a bottle in one hand. And in his other hand, you see just a tiny little music box. And he's got this very like look of, oh, yes, this is, well, it's good to see you, Tick. Oh, please come in, come in. It's good to see you, yeah?
He squints, looking at him appraisingly, and he sniffs the air.
Victor looks at him. He's like, if you wonder is that I was drinking, you is astute. Yeah, I has been drinking. I is trying to not lose my temper, and this is the best way I could think of doing it at the moment.
Temper? Best way of doing this at the moment.
Hmm. You know
Yeah?
what? Yeah. You know what, Tick? Come in. I think you might be the only person around here that is smart enough to understand mine disagreements, yeah?
Yeah?
Victor will lead you in and sit you down in a place that is perfectly formed for you because we're the same height.
Wonderful.
Or at least close enough to that the furniture would be identical sizing.
It's like a little kitty house. Wonderful.
As Victor sits down, would you like a drink, there, Tick? I do not know if you indulge.
He he goes ahead and shakes his head before taking out what seems to be a water skin that's specialized that has a little.
There's a little what?
It has a straw.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
It's
that's just good.
basically a juice box.
He's got to shoot. I love it. Oh, yeah, that's just fine, there, Tick. Uh, keeps the mind sharp, always good, good. I don't usually indulge myself. It's been about a decade since I've last indulged in this much. He kind of laughs. Which is very odd for the son of an innkeeper, yeah?
A decade. Been drinking.
Yeah, he's been drinking. You know what? I have tried hard, and what I have spent a long time there, Tick. And I have done everything I can to make the peace. And to try to see the other person's point of view, right? And you know what?
Slowly beginning to understand what he's getting for, he just begins to nod a little bit.
Yeah. So, the simple matter of the fact is this. Despite the fact that I was trying to be cordial, the simple fact that I was trying to explain that we weren't trying to hurt Cinder in any way, and that we were trying to be very significant and happy about the scenario, the world became interesting. And you know what she does instead? Ha! Instead of just accepting the apology or even trying to understand your point of view, you know what she did?
cocks his head over, right, like a bird.
Yeah, he points at him with kind of a shaky finger. She used the example of my daughter in a scenario where she would die in the same way that her mother died.
In a very not comical way, but in a way that is unable to not be comical. He raises a hand to his mouth, and a very track version of a crowd gasp comes out of it.
Yeah, yeah. You know what she say? She say, what if your daughter was going to die from some unknown disease, and the only way to save her was to find this doctor who was, only cared about the oddity of her and didn't care about the significance of healing her. Once, you know what I told her that, Tick? I said,
He tilts again.
I told her what I would hope any loving parent would say. I would gladly let the man save my daughter's life. Because, frankly, the important thing is that she is alive, despite the man's matter of opinion on it of why he wants to heal her. The point is she's healed and alive, yeah?
He nods,
Would you know what she says next?
cocks his head to the right.
Yeah, she looks at me, and just very much in that I is the better person sort of way she tends to do. This innocent, oh, this is the way I like to look at things, and this is the proper way of it to work. She just simply looks at me and goes, this is very, one second, I gotta remember the exact phrasing. I disagree. If there was a better options out there, I'd ensure success, then I would do that. But she's like, why would only do that? There was no other way. As if that was even brought up in the point. As he,
Tick goes ahead and begins to copy every word for word that he says before eventually he stops and he kind of does both hands in a lowering motion.
yeah, sorry, sir, I'm a little upset, but you know what? That really irked me. She basically, in her stupid way, that uneducated way that she does, she says I is a bad father, and that I did the wrong thing, and that she would have done it better, yeah? Despite this fact that all she told me is that this person could save my daughter's life. As if there was another option. And he looks after you, Tick. You know what, Tick? I never told you what happened in my last fight, have I?
He thinks about it before shaking his.
She was a lovely Minotaur woman. I loved her deeply. As he kind of like leans back in the chair. We had a beautiful daughter, Clarabelle. And you know what? As Ayla said, with her example, my wife became deathly ill with a disease that was not easily curable. Something I could not do. So I take her to the temples to be healed. And you know what happens then, Tick?
He tilts his head again.
No one would heal her, 'cause she was a monster in their eyes. No one cared to do anything. Do you know what I would have done if someone would have healed her just because she happened to be a Minotaur and he thought that was interesting? I would have shaken the man by the hand for this. But instead,
Anything.
yeah, yeah, as he looks over. But you know what? Instead, my wife dies, and my daughter loses her mother. This, the example Ella gives is ridiculous. It was a trap question, yeah? This is like saying, would you rather die or eat that moldy bread over there to live? And you say, I'll eat the moldy bread. And then you go, why did you eat the moldy bread? There's a buffet behind you.
He kind of like looks down at his feet, his bird toes, before kind of looking up back at Victor kind of curiously.
I'm sorry, my friend. I'm getting a little emotional. Uh, when my family is brought up, I can get a bit irrational. He says as he takes another drink. This is
Ignorant, stupid, Ayla.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And all I wanted,
He
sorry,
repeats the yeah, but he shakes his head.
you disagree?
Stupid, ignorant. He nods afterwards.
And what would you say, yeah?
He goes ahead and stands up, and he kind of goes ahead and plays out a scene for you, right? In which he goes ahead and takes out his sickle, and rather carelessly, as he moves around, repeating stupid and ignorant multiple times, he goes ahead and seemingly accidentally, the sickle kind of goes ahead and ends up kind of scratching up the flooring as if he's being rather ignorant about as he kind of goes through walking by, right? He doesn't do it too much, but he does enough to where eventually he goes ahead and lifts up the sickle and then looks over towards Victor and then kind of shrugs.
Oh, you mean that she did this by accident, yeah? Wasn't intentional?
He kind of creates wind noises indicating sighing as he kind of looks up a little bit in contemplation.
Kind of tilts his head at you. So,
Stupid, ignorant, Ayla. Ayla Dins.
yeah, she didn't have much good to say about you either, but that is a different folk. Is he?
Much good.
Well, don't forget,
Yeah,
as he takes another drink, don't forget she accused us of thinking that Cinta was nothing more than a machine, yeah? That we didn't think we had to care about her, yeah?
don't forget. Stupid, ignorant,
Yeah.
Ayla. Much good.
He kind of looks, so, stupid, ignorant, but still a good person, yeah?
He kind of like thinks about it and he like shrugs.
My was exactly. You know what? There was part of me that really wanted to dig into her, yeah? There was part of me that was wanting to take that very personal statement she used against me when she was a very personal statement against her.
He shakes his head.
You're right. It would have been stupid to do and only instigates the problem further.
He nods.
That is why I did not do it. I did not point out the fact that us looking into Cinda, perhaps the reason she was so angry at us and was unwilling to think that this was an unnecessary risk, is perhaps maybe, just maybe, that if she had allowed me to look into hers in examination, I could have seen the vampirism before it manifested itself.
He kind of looks up and thinks. He goes ahead and takes out his sign, tapping it twice on the floor. And in the same neon blue lettering, it just more or less says careless, ignorant, stupid, but not malicious.
Yeah, she's not malicious. And he,
He then proceeds to rather cruelly, but mimic when she started running away.
she started running away.
When she started running away, like
Yeah,
teary and everything.
yeah, sensitive, fair. But you know what, Dick? That's not an excuse.
And he nods.
Sorry, it's just when she did that. When she threatened our lives afterwards, of course, when she said if we failed or harmed Cinder, she would kill us. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't an idle threat.
He rolls his eyes at that, points towards his robot, points towards whatever things he has on his own lonesome.
Yeah, Victor's like, yeah, okay, I'm not saying she could have done it. I'm saying she would have attempted, yeah?
He rolls his eyes, but
The fact is the matter is, Tick. You know what, I sometimes forget that we don't know each other that well. You know the other things that annoys me about this Ayla so much? I told
he
you
tilts
about
his
my
head.
last... Yeah, I told you about how my last wife died. Do you want to hear how my first wife died?
Why?
She was an ogre. And there was a paladin of Zeros, nonetheless, that emerged and saw an ogre and killed her because she was a monster and it was his holy duty to do so. He had good intentions. He thought what he was right. There was nothing wrong in his mind, yeah?
He nods, even though he is currently emitting the sound of what seems to be fire. His
And
feathers are a bit ruffled.
when and he kind of just, well, you know what, in Vanilla, she heard that story and she agreed with me that it was wrong, was that he should have listened. But you know what? It was merely nothing more than carelessness. It's the same carelessness that Ella accused me of being a terrible father, that I didn't love my child enough. She may not have intended to do it. She may have done it by accident and wasn't malicious. But that is the intent she had in the end, yeah.
He kind of scrunches whatever little feathers he has on his face before he kind of takes out a sign, and it just says Ayla with an equal sign, putting it on the other hand to evil, but with several question marks around that. And he kind of looks over at him with like a bit of a tilt to his head, and he repeats the same things. Stupid, ignorant, Ayla.
Yeah.
Much careless.
Yeah. Much careless. But there's just so much I want to. As he just grips the bottle head at this point.
I think you're the only one who is smart enough to understand. Not Ayla. Ayla, not understand.
Victor kind of looks up at you and kind of gives a half-hearted chuckle at those wording. Yeah, yeah, he'll not understand. But the thing is, Tick, I don't know if Ayla wants to understand.
He goes ahead and he, yeah, no, okay. Tick will go ahead and walk up over towards Victor and place a hand on his shoulder. And then he goes ahead and Ayla, much careless. But then he goes ahead and takes his other hand and he points on his temple and then points on Victor's temple.
We, yeah, he was indicating that we smart, yeah?
Be smart, yeah? But he goes ahead and shakes his he nods at that, but then shakes his head.
Oh, that is not what you mean. We wish to understand.
We understand.
He kind of gives a sigh as he comes to realize what you're saying. He's like, I see, yeah. We should understand, yeah? We
And he nods.
we should know better. We just He kind of looks over at Tick. I don't know what is his tick. Normally, I do my best to help the people. I try to understand everyone, no matter who they are. I don't look at anyone as any different or any, but despite what they are or who they are. What that matters is that they're a person, right? Yeah?
It takes a minute, but out of his mouth, you hear the following. Is that a bird? Don't tell me. You're having me work with a bird. This little what? What are you, a kinku? I believe. Really? You want me to work with this? Get out of my fucking laboratory. You hear several different types of other complaints revolving around his race, his intellect, other things of that sort, all directed towards him. Sometimes you hear other people defending him, but it's very greatly outmatched by the ratio of people who, with him being berated.
Victor kind of
He
looks
says
over
all
at
of those. He, with his arms, his forearms, he creates an X in front of his mouth. Careless.
Yeah,
We understand.
we do, yeah. You're right, Tick. And he kind of smiles at you. You know, Tick, I think we have more in common than even our glaring intellect and our mighty statures, yeah?
What he goes ahead and then does is he goes ahead and goes through that same clip that you heard from the very first one, but it then later turns into what seems to be a sound of a flying projectile, a splash that sizzles, and that same man being like, did that thing just, there's acid, all over my face, with
Oh!
what comes out laughter later, and then almost waving a hand in front of his face as if he was clearing a bad smell.
Oh.
Much careless. We understand.
Ah, I see. So, you understand where I'm coming from, yeah? That,
And taking out his sign, their words don't matter, is what pops up on them.
looks down at the side and reads it. You know what, Tick? That is possibly true. The words should not matter. And I don't want them to matter. They usually don't matter. You say that you have been ostracized and judged and underestimated simply because you is a Kenku, yeah?
He nods.
Well, I've had similar facts with mine, and he kind of motions over to the two skeletons sitting in the corner of his room, not doing anything. My natural talents, yeah?
He nods.
I never do this to harm anyone. I do it as a way that I do to help people. I run an inn who helps the people get the cost down. I gives them the ability to drink and have the good times. And when I was younger, they look at the necromancer and assume that I must be evil. But ironically, despite that fact, they look at the gnome and they say I must be a funny little man at the top of that, yeah?
He nods, rolling his eyes, kind of creating what seems to be something reminiscent to an
So, you know what I do? I think I'd rather have them think I'm a funny little man than an evil monster that raises the dead for evil, dark purposes, like they think for some reason. And there's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. But Ayla, she sees me as a necromancer and an evil monster. Time and time again, she has said, "You are doing the evil thing of taking over a useless body that is going to just literally turn to dust in about a decade. That is what happens. That is the science of it." But she looks at us as like, "You're enslaving them." He's like, "Can you enslave a chair?" He says as he starts drinking heavily again, as he's getting back into his bit of his irate rant.
Tick will very calmly walk over towards the bottle, and he won't grab it, but he will point directly at Victor, and he points to the table that's sitting next.
Yeah. He looks at the table and looks at you. "Yeah, you're right," and he'll hand you the bottle. "Would you mind putting it over there? Actually, you know what?" He wiggles his hands in a mage hand, picks up the bottle, and puts it away from him.
Mm.
"You're right, Tick. I think I think that I've had enough." But you do notice that in his other hand, that music box is still very firmly gripped.
Is the music box still playing?
It is closed. It's at the moment is a closed music box. I would just assume Tick would recognize it as such because of Tick's expertises.
Tick will go ahead and tap the music box in order to like kind of bring attention to it.
Oh, oh, my music box. Yeah, yeah. Huh. You was curious about this.
He nods.
Yeah, I actually just finished making this. And he kind of thinks and stops and looks out the window to see what time it is. Oh, must have been several hours ago at the very least, but it's something I used to do for my kids. And he'll just slowly open up the music box, and where Tick will see is the slow, tinny, kind of lullaby-like tune starts playing as you see what looks to be a Minotaur woman on a rocking chair holding a little Minotaur baby rocking back and forth, nursing it.
The same track awe kind of comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, this was this is when I had a duplicate of what I made for my daughter many years ago. It reminds me of her mother.
A voice you haven't quite heard yet kind of comes out of his mouth, and he just says, "Impressive."
Oh, thank you. This was I used to make these a lot. I stopped doing it as much when I got once the kids grew up. Yeah, I tend to do it to stop thinking when I can't turn it off. As he looks up and goes, "I suppose you know what I mean." He taps the head when the brain goes dark.
His eyes don't roll, but they kind of go ahead and float down to the bottom left a little bit in memory before he looks up and nods.
Yeah, when you want to hurt the people around you, when you want to do the bad things, and you know that doing the bad things would make you a stupid person.
Ignorant, careless.
Yeah, exactly. But I tell you, Betik, I was never so tempted to strike Ayla than I was at that moment.
Yeah. And he creates the same fire crackly noises, plays back the scene of the guy screaming when acid got thrown on his face. He pets his bird in tandem with that. But
Yeah,
but then he after that though, he goes ahead and does the tapping of the temples thing and then makes
and then makes what? You cut out the last word there,
and
didn't
then
you?
makes an X.
Yeah, just, shouldn't do so, exactly.
He taps the music box again, and then makes a motion that seems to be winding.
You want me to wind it back up?
He nods.
Does so to replay the tune and having the mother in the chair start rocking again.
He sits quietly as the tune plays, letting it go through its entire duration. Before, or go ahead.
Oh no, he just sighs. Ha ha. As he listens himself.
Eventually, of course, it ends.
You know
We
what?
understand.
I think you know what.
They careless. And then he points down to his sign that still says their words don't matter.
You're right.
He'll go ahead and take his hand and underline
Underline which word?
the words on the
Oh, the
sign.
word.
Their words
Okay.
don't matter.
You know what, Tick? You're right. You kind of notice that when you first came in, he is miserable. You could see that he was drinking to forget, but he was in that dark place when you start drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And but you kind of see that shift in tone after speaking with Tick about this.
One sec. He'll he'll underline the thing, like kind of pointing at it, getting a little bit more impatient with each time.
He looks down as it. The words don't matter, yeah?
Their words don't matter, yeah? What matter? And he points at his mouth and opens it, and out comes the exact same tune.
I'm not 100% certain what she was getting at, Tick. But the
He
words don't
mim
matter, but... oh, sorry.
at that he goes ahead and points at the points at the he points at the music box. He creates with his own arms the motion of cradling a baby, and he points back at the tune coming out of his mouth.
It's what... The words don't matter, but it's more what if I start to understand the gift, it's what my kids and those I care about matter, yeah?
And then he points directly on his chest.
And you too?
No, like directly on Victor's chest.
Oh, and what I matter. You said on his chest. I didn't know which his you meant. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Oh, and what I think, yeah? What I...
And he nods.
You know what, Tick? For a bird, for a man of few words, you really know how to get to the point.
He puts his hands on his on his hips, all assuring, like, even though again he's 3 feet tall, but very much he kind of sits tall, since I assume they're both just kind of sitting on his couch. But he goes ahead and does such. But thinking back on like the previous things that had kind of happened, Ella don't matter. Yeah.
You're right. Ella don't matter. So, and he kind of looks back. I'm not going to lie to you. I never did dislike the girl till then.
He points at himself. Dislikes a girl.
You don't like her much
But then
either.
he then proceeds to repeat the argument that they all had all of them, everyone who was involved. And then as he's doing this, you can just hear the slowly fading in sound of fire crackling that you've heard before, kind of taking over their voices. And then he just throws his hands up in frustration.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean.
But then, waving his hands in a dismissive way, he then points towards Tick's own chest, his head, points back over towards Victor's chest, his head, and recreates the music, points towards that, points towards the music box, and then nods.
Victor smiles at that. You're right. It was. You know what, Dick? There's a question I've been meaning to ask you, but we really never had the chance before. I know you is smart, and I know you is one of the. You have the pride that goes with the brains, yeah?
If a bird could smile,
Well,
his eyes twinkle.
yeah. What is it you want in life, yeah? I told you what I want. But what is it you is after?
Opening his mouth, a different voice comes in. You realize that your entire kind was cursed to ever fly again. Why would you ever want to bring flight to not only yourself, but all these other people? You realize that's not possible, right? Flight can only be achieved by magic at best. Magic is the solution to everything. I don't know about the science of yours, but clearly you are very much mistaken.
Oh,
It then proceeds to go to another scene in which this person is screaming because acid got thrown on their body.
I'm starting to
He he kind of like go ahead.
I'm just starting to say I'm starting to notice a little hypocriticalness of Tick not letting Victor blow Ayla up.
No, but here's the thing, right? Like he looks towards this and he kind of like raises a shrug, but like slower with his head kind of lowered down. Like he's not exactly proud.
He's not exactly proud of it.
Yeah, it's almost like he was repeating that recording, but he forgot that part was in. Um, so he stopped abruptly after the screaming had begun.
Victor kind of raises that like suspicious eyebrow, like, you know what? You sure you don't want me to throw a fireball in it?
he, he almost hesitates a split second before he shakes his head rapidly. But then he goes ahead and takes towards his little bird, and he goes ahead and steps away from the couch where they had been sitting, and he takes out his hands, and like a child, he runs around and with his arms splayed over to his sides as if he was flying and whatnot. But then he points towards you, and then, of course, through their own names and through the names that he's heard, Jubei, Ayla, Davia, Evren, and then he just kind of raises his arms to what you can assume to be greater than just this area, greater than this continent, and then proceeds to do the flight thing again.
You want to fly?
He nods.
Victor kind of puts a hand on his shoulder and smiles. That is a wonderful goal, Tick.
Whenever he gets angry, his feathers, particularly the ones on his head, stand up. But in this particular case, they fray out a little bit, but in a way that his eyes are also twinkling.
You know what? With the pair of us, being the good friends that we are and the smart as we are, I bet we could help solve that problem together, yeah?
Out of his mouth, he begins to play the same tune that Victor had showed him. But as he does so, um, he goes ahead and kind of overlaying part of it. He kind of plays back part of the conversation that Jubei and Tick had with their agreement. But after he does that, with the theme still playing, he goes ahead and takes out a hand to shake.
Yeah, a deal, Tick. He shakes the proffered feathered hand and smiles and goes, "You know what's the best thing is too, yeah?
Tilts his head.
For the test subjects to see if the flying machine works, we don't have to worry about anybody getting hurt," as he points to the skeletons in the corner.
He takes him a second, but then he looks over towards the skeletons and his mouth opens. No sound comes out, but he puts his hands on his cheeks.
Yeah, exactly.
And a sound of surprise comes out of his mouth. This is something he's never thought of before.
Yeah, exactly, right? We can make the thing as reckless as we need to do until it works, and we don't have to worry about any casualties.
He looks a hop and a skip away from a happy dance.
That is it, Tick. The perfect blend of necromancy and techromancy, ah?
He kind of goes ahead and taking both of those words, techromancy.
Techromancy, I like it.
With that being said, and everything and whatnot, I would say that. Yeah, he would. Nearly getting thrown off balance by his big old fucking backpack. Tick goes ahead and, in a rather sudden motion, kind of goes ahead and kind of hugs Victor.
Victor kind of was a little shocked, kind of smiles, and hugs him back. I think he's the best of friends, buddy.
He nods, very much so. But other than that, he kind of puts his hand on his chin, and then he remembers as he goes ahead and takes out of the small pocket that he has the notes and points towards them, and then points towards the door.
Is these notes on the door that we was trying to open?
Yeah, sure, why not?
I don't know, man. You point at notes at the door. I'm not sure what you were getting at with that, or did you want to go look at these things?
So, yeah, no, it's like the notes. It seems to be notes that he had written up on Cinder's head, and the things that had kind of been going on from there once we had figured out what was going on inside. And he then points towards Victor and he flips to a new page and pretends to scribble down something, and then kind of gestures towards him, and then kind of cocks a head.
Oh, you want to work on what we learned about Cinder, yeah?
Nods.
You know what? I actually have some new information on that.
His eyes twinkle before he flips to his already existing mounts of notes.
Yeah, I just had this talk with Cinder, in fact. I saw in the forge when I was making this, as he opens up as he looks at, lifts the music box. The funny thing is I think after what we have done, she's becoming slightly more, what's the word? I don't want to say, more like as a person with a personality.
He kind of takes out a sign again, and it just says animated ?
I'm not certain, but for example, the music box?
He nods.
Well, when I was leaving the forge and when I was working on it, out of nowhere, After having a nice chat with Cinda, Cinda started to play the exact same music from herself.
Say that part again. The last
Oh,
part.
Cinda started to play the music from the music box by herself. In other words, she was replicating the sound from the music box.
Oh, he kind of naturally like a thing that he just for everyone to. A thing that Tick oftentimes does. It's kind of like how we accidentally mimic things that we see. Tick kind of does that literally, where sometimes he'll like overlay information as he's listening. But after kind of hearing that, he kind of like tilts his head, kind of thinks about it before simultaneously shrugging, but also kind of like writing that on his notes before he goes in and takes the pencil and then points towards the door where he had just came from. Um,
He kind of looks at the door with Tick and goes, "You're right, Tick. Let's go do some research."
Again, if a bird could smile, his eyes just twinkle a little bit more as he goes ahead and opens the door. Oh, actually, before he does, as they're walking out, right before he can, Tick goes ahead and sticks out an arm before he can cross by, and motioning over his bird with a few click noises, a spray shoots down over him in the form of a lesser restoration.
Restoration spell to remove his drunken state.
Yep.
He says, "Oh, well, that was very useful."
Again, he kind of fluffs up his chest and stands proudly before marching off to the laboratory.
His Victor follows close behind with a smile on his face, looking much better than he had going in.